is Anouk, who just wants to discuss a few people who've had a strong impact on his life outside of Toastmasters. Please help me welcome Anouk with his speech titled Infortoship.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. My speech today is on mentorship, but because I never had a formal mentor until I joined Toastmasters, I wanted to make this speech about people who've had a profound impact on my life pre-Toastmasters. Hence the title of the speech. I called it Infortoship, which is literally informal and mentorship combined. So with this speech, I wanted to discuss three people in particular, and I'd like to elaborate on a couple of things each person has taught me along the way. The first person is my mother. My mother is my source of inspiration. She's taught me lots of things, but two stand out in particular. The first one is to be kind and supportive, and these are qualities that she embodies to the hilt. About a year ago, during my struggle to land a job, my mother was my pillar of support. She was by my side, constantly reiterating the idea that I only needed one job to make it big. Extremely grateful for that. The second thing she taught me was never actually explicitly said to me. It's something that I inferred through her behavior over the years, and that is to show up. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, none of us can deny that motherhood is a full-time job and a difficult one at that. You know, my mother would go out of her way to make food whenever I asked for it, or take me out whenever I wanted to go out. And yes, you might be saying, all mothers do that, that's in the job description. But I can tell you right now, there were days and times when she probably didn't want to do any of those things. She probably wanted to crawl up in bed and do nothing. And yet she showed up, she never gave up, she never quit. And that right there is inspiration, at least for me, to pursue whatever I'm passionate about, all guns blazing. The second person I'd like to talk about is my father. Now, my father does not mince his words. He tells it to you straight, and it's through his vocalization that I learned these next two things. The first one is to be more observant. I personally love to daydream. I could do it for days on end if I could. But unfortunately, in order to be more observant, one has to be more present. It's been a bit of a struggle, but I've definitely seen an improvement. I'll give you an example. So at work, we have this thing called plan checking, which is essentially taking an engineer's design set and critiquing it for errors. And it's a pretty iterative process. So one engineer will get a design set, review it, and then pass it along to the next engineer to double check. It ends up being about 3 to 4 engineers involved in this process. I personally have been able to spot errors and mistakes that the others have missed, which has been extremely gratifying and just serves as clear evidence of that improvement I was talking about. The second thing my father's taught me is to eliminate dead space. And I remember about a year ago, it was a Saturday at around 6 a.m. My father barged into the room, looked at me and said, "What are you doing? Why aren't you up?" I just looked at him in pure disbelief and thought to myself, this can't be happening right now. I told him I'd be up in a few minutes. That was a lie. An hour later, I'm still in bed. He comes up, all hell breaks loose. But that's a story for another time. I couldn't understand his rationale and his mentality from waking me up at that time. Didn't understand it then, but I do now. And that was essentially his way of saying, time is precious, get up, do more, be as productive as you can. And two things that help me be more productive. The first one is to make a to-do list for the following day. So on the day itself, it's too much of a hassle to think about what I have to do. It's a real time saver. The second thing is to reduce my time on social media. I've drastically reduced it. It hasn't helped me much. It's just a lot of noise. It doesn't really help with the productivity part of it. My father did do one more thing that I'd like to acknowledge. He took me out of my first high school and put me into my second high school, which definitely changed the trajectory of my life, and it introduced me to this last person I'm going to talk to you all about. His name is Akihiro. He's my friend who's based in Melbourne, Australia. And he's taught me to not get bogged down by the bigger picture. And his solution to not getting bogged down by the bigger picture is what the Japanese call Kaizen theory, which literally means continuous improvement. So in this context, that means taking that bigger picture and breaking up into lots of smaller pictures and systematically getting each one done. So for instance, when preparing for this speech, I took that bigger picture and broke my speech up into content, structure, and transitions, and completed it that way. Akihiro has also taught me to not bow away from challenges. Not that I do, but on occasion I do find myself slipping. And he gets his point across using the most vivid, concise analogies. I'm a big cricket fan, and I'm not sure if people here are very familiar with the game. So I'll give you all the baseball alternative. So he'll say something along the lines of, Anouk, you've been hitting fastballs your entire life. It's time to hit a screwball or a curveball for a change. Absolute brilliance. And he said, I'm extremely grateful to have him in my life as well. All in all, I don't think mentorship has to be a formal thing. And it was very obvious that these three people have had a profound impact on my life. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.